The radical power of surrender. Why softness is your greatest strength. Have you ever noticed how we glorify the hustle, the grind, the push, the never ending climb towards some elusive summit of success that keeps moving higher the moment we think we've reached it? I recently had the profound privilege of interviewing Nat Bushell, whose wisdom has transformed countless lives through her groundbreaking work empowering Black professionals to embrace vulnerability as strength. Nat isn't just a thought leader, she's a soul shifter, dismantling generations of harmful conditioning with the gentle power of her truth. Her research and lived experience have created ripples of transformation that are becoming waves across industries, challenging our fundamental understanding of power in ways we desperately needed but couldn't articulate. We've been sold a dangerous myth, the myth that strength means endurance at all costs, that leadership means having all the answers, that success means never showing weakness. But what if everything we've been taught about power is backward? What if true breakthrough doesn't come from white knuckling your way through life, but through the radical act of surrender? I know surrender sounds like giving up, it sounds like weakness, it sounds like the opposite of everything we've been conditioned to value, especially for Black women who've had to fight for every inch of respect and recognition. But here's what I learned from Nat and the remarkable women whose stories I'm about to share. Surrender isn't about giving up, it's about giving over. It's about releasing the exhausting grip of control and aligning with something greater than your own striving. Let me tell you about Etiashia Turner. Tiasha spent years climbing corporate ladders, navigating spaces where she was often the only Black woman in the room. She did what many of us do. She armored up. She worked twice as hard. She never showed weakness. She never asked for help. I thought strength meant enduring in silence, she told Nat during their work together. I thought vulnerability would be my undoing. But that armor came with a cost: chronic health issues, strained relationships, a growing emptiness despite external success. The turning point came when Itiashia collapsed from exhaustion after a 72-hour work sprint. Lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling under harsh fluorescent lights, she had a revelation that would transform not just her life, but the lives of countless Black professionals she would later mentor. I realized I'd been confusing strength with suffering, she said. I've been wearing my exhaustion like a badge of honor, as if my value was measured by how much pain I could endure without flinching. This epiphany led Itiashia to develop workshops challenging the narrative that Black women must constantly endure hardship to prove their worth. She began advocating for what she calls revolutionary softness, the radical act of prioritizing healing over hustling, of resting when needed, of asking for help without shame. The results were transformative. Participants reported improved mental health, greater career satisfaction, and perhaps most surprisingly, more authentic leadership presence after integrating vulnerability into their professional lives. One workshop attendee put it perfectly: I spent my whole life thinking I needed to be bulletproof. Turns out my humanity is my superpower. This isn't just feel good philosophy. This is practical, life changing wisdom that Nat Bushell has been championing through her work. The kind of wisdom that doesn't just improve careers, but transforms lives. Consider Corrada Williams, whose story reveals another dimension of surrender. After years of fighting for a seat at tables where she was consistently undervalued despite her qualifications, Karada had an insight that would completely redirect her path. Instead of continuing to battle for inclusion in spaces that weren't designed for her, she decided to build new tables altogether. I was exhausted from trying to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it, she shared with Nat. The moment I surrendered that need for external validation was the moment I found my true power. Karada began creating spaces where Black professionals could bring their full, authentic selves to work. She launched initiatives empowering others to design organizations reflecting their values rather than conforming to established norms. The impact rippled outward. Dozens of entrepreneurs she mentored went on to found mission driven companies that became models for inclusive leadership. By surrendering the fight for acceptance in spaces that didn't value her, she created something far more powerful, a movement. Building new tables isn't about exclusion, Corrada explains. It's about creating spaces where everyone can thrive without dimming their light. This philosophy, this surrender of personal ambition in favor of communal upliftment, sparked broader shifts toward equity focused business models nationwide. But surrender isn't just about how we show up professionally, it's also about how we relate to ourselves. Tawana Bain's journey illustrates this beautifully. As a Black woman entrepreneur facing systemic barriers in business ownership, Tawana initially fell into cycles of overwork, constantly seeking approval from gatekeepers outside her community. I was desperate for validation, she admitted to Nat during their powerful conversation. I thought if I just worked harder, achieved more, proved myself beyond any doubt, then I'd finally feel worthy. That desperation kept her trapped in exhausting patterns of striving without fulfillment. The breakthrough came when she shifted focus inward, recognizing her unique gifts and creating safe spaces where vulnerability was celebrated among peers facing similar obstacles. The moment I stopped begging for a seat at someone else's table and recognized the feast I could create myself was the moment everything changed, Tawana said. She founded programs centering lived experience over resume lines, creating coaching cohorts focused on holistic growth rather than just profit metrics. The ripple effect has been transformative across multiple industries by normalizing conversations around identity driven leadership development. These stories from Nat Bushell's work reveal a profound truth. Transformation comes when we move from desperation to surrender, aligning our ambitions with a higher purpose rather than simply seeking blessings for ourselves. It reminds me of the biblical story of Hannah, who desperately wanted a child. Year after year, she prayed from a place of anguish and bitterness. But the breakthrough came only when she surrendered, when she aligned her desire with a greater purpose, vowing to dedicate her child to God's service. That shift in posture from grasping to open handed surrender is what opened the door for her deepest transformation. I see this pattern repeated in the lives of so many Black professionals, especially women. We've been conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to our ability to endure hardship silently, to push through pain, to be the strong one everyone else can lean on. But what if strength looks different than we thought? What if true strength is found in the courage to be soft, in the bravery to rest when you need it, in the boldness to ask for help? What if leadership isn't about having all the answers, but about creating spaces where questions can be safely asked? What if success isn't measured by how much you can carry alone, but by how well you've learned to share the load? This is the radical message that emerged from my conversation with Nat Bushell and the powerful stories she shared. Embracing vulnerability isn't weakness, it's an act of courage that breaks cycles of relentless self reliance. For Black professionals, especially women, choosing softness is revolutionary. It defies generations of conditioning that equated our worth with our utility, our value with our endurance. And here's another truth that emerged from these stories: no one succeeds alone. Building supportive networks through mentorships or peer groups is essential for thriving as a Black professional or entrepreneur. Collective action and shared wisdom foster resilience, innovation, and lasting progress in ways that isolated striving never could. As Nat Bushell's work demonstrates, community becomes the container where our individual surrenders multiply into collective power. So, where does this leave us? At a crossroads of possibility. I challenge you today to question everything you've been taught about strength, to interrogate the voices, whether external or internal, that tell you your worth is measured by your productivity, your resilience by your silence, your success by your solitude. What might change in your life if you embraced surrender not as defeat, but as alignment? If you practice softness not as weakness, but as revolutionary self care? This isn't just philosophical musing. This is an urgent call to transformation because our world doesn't need more exhausted warriors. It doesn't need more burned out change makers. It doesn't need more leaders running on empty. What our world desperately needs is people who have found the courage to put down their armor, people who have discovered that their vulnerability is their greatest offering, people who understand that their softness isn't their liability, it's their superpower. So I leave you with this. Tomorrow, when you face that meeting, that challenge, that mountain that seems impossible to climb, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what might become possible if I surrendered my need to control this outcome? If I opened myself to receiving help? If I trusted that my worth isn't determined by my performance? In that pause, in that question, in that surrender, that's where your true power awaits. The revolution we need won't be won through force, it will be birthed through surrender. The future we're creating won't be built on exhaustion, it will be cultivated through rest. The healing we're seeking won't come through striving, it will emerge through softness. Your surrender isn't your weakness, it's your breakthrough waiting to happen.